Hello there and welcome to The Ring, Euronews' weekly debate show broadcasting from the European Parliament here in Brussels. I'm Maeve McMahon and as you know, here on The Ring, members of the European Parliament go face to face on some of the most tricky issues of our time. This week, as we mark 10 years since the UK voted to leave the European Union, we're asking if the bloc has changed for the better or worse, and if the UK could ever or should rejoin. To set the scene, here's our Luis Albertos.
A decade has passed since the UK made the momentous decision to leave the European Union. After 47 years of membership, the Brexit vote sent shockwaves through Europe and reshaped Britain as we know it. 10 years on, 7 prime ministers have come and gone, and this week another one met the same fate. In an emotional speech at number 10, Keir Starmer stepped down after days of mounting pressure. What has Brexit taught Europe about sovereignty, migration, economic competitiveness, democratic accountability and disinformation? Has it strengthened the case for European integration? And with memories of the referendum still shaping the political debate, could Britain ever consider rejoining the bloc? Or is that possibility still too politically divisive?
The questions we have for our contenders. Let's meet them.
Barry Andrews, an Irish MEP from the Liberal Renew Europe group. He's the chair of the Committee on Development, vice chair of the Delegation for Relations with Palestine, and a member of the delegation to the EU-UK Parliamentary Partnership Assembly. On the 10th anniversary of the Brexit vote, he says, "Brexit was and is a con job. The UK has not been as invisible and irrelevant on the European stage as it is now, since, in my view, before the Battle of Agincourt of 1415. Sander Smit, a Dutch MEP from the European Conservatives and Reformists group. He serves in the Committee on Constitutional Affairs and has also been Vice Chair of the Committee on Fisheries earlier in the current parliamentary term. We still deeply regret Brexit and miss the UK's crucial voice for fiscal and financial discipline in the European Council," he says. "Our future lies in a stronger partnership. Let the UK and EU countries move beyond the past and work together as natural, sovereign allies."
So Barry Andrews and Sander Smit, welcome to The Ring. Thanks for joining us. So here we are, 10 years on. Has Brexit helped or hindered the European Union, Sander?
I think it has really hindered the European Union in achieving a union which also takes into account several national sensitivities, also protects the national veto. I think the United Kingdom would have been a very valuable ally for my own member state, but also for other member states in Council. And for my group in particular, of course, the ECR group was founded by the British Conservative Party, and we still sorely miss them, I think.
You would agree, I'm sure, Barry Andrews, with that. The EU is in a weaker place now.
Well, I think definitely the UK is in a weaker place. I think the European Union has a capacity to evolve, and I think there has been very significant developments in the European Union in the last 10 years and in the world. And the basic lesson is that we live in a much more contested world, and we're much better together as an EU 27. So I think that we are beginning to learn that lesson, but for the UK, it has been a total disaster.
What other lessons has Brussels and the EU learned in the past 10 years?
I think we should learn from Brexit, first and foremost, that we need to respect national sovereignty, maybe also have tailored membership, not doing away with the Copenhagen criteria, but certain opt-outs, and not have a one-size-fits-all approach. And I think not controlling migration, not taking into account these national specificities has really also caused Brexit. So I think we need to self-reflect a bit.
I think if you did self-reflect, you would recognise that actually Britain had a very tailor-made membership of the European Union for an awful long time, including being outside Schengen, including being outside the euro, and having a very, very differentiated form of membership. And this still wasn't enough on this occasion. And what has happened since then in the UK is that there has been a massive peak in migration. The UK economy has gone down very, very substantially. As we've just heard in the introduction, they've had 7 prime ministers. So this is a state of governance which is absolutely disastrous.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I just meant that if we as a European Union want to have the United Kingdom work together with us or eventually rejoin, I sense that you would be open to that, but you can comment on that later. We need to take into account these specificities. But now we see the European Commission and also European leaders evolving towards a more centralized approach of the Union with less tailor-made, less opt-outs, less possibilities to take
and we'll come back to that shortly, but I want to go back to the UK politics because, of course, 7 prime ministers have come and gone since the Brexit vote. Is this because of Brexit, this political chaos we're seeing in the UK?
Well, I mean, there's nobody looking to leave the European Union anymore. And there is a waiting room for membership that is bursting at the seams. So the one big takeaway is that I think in the contested geopolitical world that we live in now, we're much better together. Mark Carney articulated that very well for middle-sized countries, for Europe, for Canada. So I think Britain has learned that lesson in a very difficult way.
Because we remember 10 years ago when the vote happened, Nigel Farage said the European Union was dead and, quote, finished. We saw Marine Le Pen, Geert Wilders, calling for their countries to have a referendum. That's off the table now.
It's all off the table, and even Mr. Wilders never mentions Nexit or Brexit anymore.
Never mentioned.
So I mean, it's for slow learners. We now have had a laboratory example of what happens when you leave the European Union, when you try to take back control, when you try to do things by yourself. It is clear that this has deepened the European Union's roots. It has enhanced the European Union's reputation, and that's why almost all of our neighbourhood countries are thinking about joining, including Iceland, including Norway, including all the Western Balkans and Eastern Europe.
And what about the situation in the UK? The EU and the UK were just getting back on track with those relations. An EU summit was supposed to be taking place at the end of July. It's now off the table. So what will the latest chaos mean for this relationship?
2 things I would say to the Commission. First of all, it's right to delay the summit, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the first point is that you have to anonymise relations with the UK. It can't depend on the personality of the Prime Minister, particularly where you have Farage quite high in the opinion polls. So I think the European Commission has to recognise this. Plus, it cannot continue to treat the UK as an ordinary third country because the UK is so aligned with our key interests as Europe. And I think a lot of UK politicians recognise this. The Commission has to recognise that too.
And during the very lengthy negotiation period, the divorce period, if you like, was the EU fair to the United Kingdom, you think?
I think in many aspects we were very fair. If I look at fisheries, really took a huge portion out of our fishery rights, etc. So I think the European Union has been right, but tough. I think maybe in some aspects too tough. So that's also my suggestion. Let's work together closer. Let's move past the past bickering and find new solutions, because I think that will also pave the way for new candidate member states like Iceland and Norway. And if we don't improve the relationship with the United Kingdom in the future, I think we have a referendum in Iceland upcoming and show signs of that development. We will eventually end up also losing these candidate member states who do fulfill the Copenhagen criteria.
But I just want to bring in an incident that took place in the European Parliament chamber just last week in Strasbourg when MEPs, when you were voting on measures to increase the deportation of undocumented migrants. Take a look.
On the agenda, the report by Mrs. Brigmont on the EU-Pakistan agreement modification of concessions on tariff rate quotes. Vote on consent by roll call vote. The vote is open. We move to the... It's adopted.
So a flavour there of what's going on inside the very European Parliament chamber. Sander Schmidt, what were you chanting?
I was not chanting. I don't think chanting belongs in a parliament. That way I did applaud the outcome of the result of the vote.
And were you sitting beside the chanters?
Yes, they were to the left of me, so in the right-wing groups.
This is a good glimpse of the kind of divisiveness that we can see right now in politics, right here and, of course, across the pond?
Yeah, look, it was a disgrace. It was an appalling low point in my experience in the European Parliament. I voted against the measure. I have a very clear conscience about that. And what I was very disappointed about was that some members of your party online described one of our colleagues, who is originally from Iraq, that she should go home. Now, that should be withdrawn. That is the subject of a complaint. And I would put it to you that you should recognise that that was a mistake. Whatever about not chanting in the Parliament, but encouraging one of our colleagues who wasn't born in the European Union to go home, surely that's an unacceptable political approach.
I wasn't there at the incident, so I can't vouch for how it was formulated by my colleague and how it was intended. So I think if we look at the outcome of the result, everyone who is an EU citizen who holds the right to be here can remain in the European Union. This is about the return of illegal migrants, illegal aliens who have penetrated the European Union without a right to asylum and to remain here, to return hubs under the full compliance with EU and international fundamental human rights.
It's just interesting because Brexit, of course, was driven largely by migration concerns, and we're seeing that right now in the EU, the bloc taking much tougher policies when it comes to migration. Has Europe moved closer to the position that won that Brexit referendum, Barry Andrews?
My view is you can't beat the far right by becoming far right. That way they win and you lose. So I think it is a major mistake here. I think, Sanders says there is human rights conditionality in relation to these return hubs. But let's not forget, there are human rights clauses in the EU-Israel Association Agreement, which have been willfully ignored by the Commission for 3 years in spite of the ongoing war crimes, in spite of the ongoing statements made by certain Israeli ministers in relation to European citizens, in relation to Palestinians in the West Bank. So I take no comfort from the presence in this agreement of human rights conditions in relation to return hubs.
Quick reaction to that?
I do. I think that we uphold the rule of law as a European Union, and we will also do this in the return hub in safe third countries. And I think a lot of the Irish voters will also be disappointed that you voted against the result, which is the last building block of the EU Migration and Asylum Pact, which you supported.
Some Irish voters will be disappointed that I voted against it. That is correct. But that's the essence of populism, that you're determined by whatever current. No, what I try to explain to our citizens is that yes, we have a new migration and asylum pact. It only came into force 2 weeks ago. We also have migration conditionality in a lot of our external relations. We also have memorandums of understanding and returns. And my argument is that we should let all of this work before we go down what was a taboo subject just a few years ago about sending families and children to places they've never had any connection with to satisfy this demand in circumstances where asylum applications are going down in the European Union, where deportations are actually going up. This is the wrong time to do this.
And we have done extensive reporting on that topic here on Euronews, and we've also done previous editions of The Ring, so catch up with them. But now it is time to move on to our next round. Now, you've already got a glimpse of what happens inside the European Parliament chamber, but now I'm going to give you another one, because their MEPs also ask each other direct questions and follow up. So here on The Ring, you'll also have that opportunity. So Sander Schmidt, please address your very first question to Barry Andrews.
Barry, the United Kingdom was our strongest ally for fiscal discipline, resisting EU debt schemes and protecting national sovereignty, also for Ireland. Do you still miss the British Prime Minister in the European Council to help us protect national vetoes? And would you actually welcome the EU back into the European Union? It came to
a couple of questions there, Sander. Yes. So I think first of all, yes, of course, we'd welcome the UK back into the European Union. I think of all EU member states, Ireland was most aligned with the UK, actually, on a whole range of issues, particularly around trade, the provision of financial services, but most importantly, peace on the island of Ireland. And Ireland and the UK pulled very hard in the same direction on that, and the European Union acted as an honest broker and really helped us. So for me, there's absolutely no question about that. In terms of veto power and the protection of veto power, I think that has held the European Union back, whereas other major global actors are able to act quickly. We take an inordinate amount of time, and we're being held hostage by single individuals in the European Council.
And now your question.
So my question is how the ECR are making arrangements with far-right MEPs in the European Parliament, some of whom are pro-Putin. How do you explain that to your voters in the Netherlands, that you are making these alliances with pro-Russian parties and pro-Russian actors in the European Parliament?
I think it's not about making alliances with pro-Russian parties. We have a broad centre-right majority now, new majorities in the European Parliament, which vote along with us as an ECR group. We firmly support Ukraine, so there's no doubt about that. And if they vote along us in supporting, for instance, the return regulation proposed by EPP Commissioner and by the Commission of Ms. von der Leyen, not by far-right populists, but by the European Commission, we safeguarded, we defended the proposal of Commissioner Brunner there, then there's no case of us collaborating with any such parties. But I do not uphold a firewall or a cordon sanitaire if people want to support my proposals. That would be political suicide. And I'm sure that certain of your own proposals and amendments have been voted in favor of also by far-right parties.
But there's a difference between
committee votes.
There's a difference between passive support and actively collaborating with these parties on amendments and issues like that. So your point is that you don't actively collaborate with the far right, the pro-Putin parties?
We've worked with all democratically elected representatives in this House, and if they want to support us on issues such as return regulation, combating illegal migration, then I fully support such cooperation. And there's no threat there or danger of legitimizing their positions in certain other issues. There we have a very strong stance, and there we are also really aligned, I think, in many issues.
Okay. Well, we've heard the views now from the MEPs, and you've had the opportunity to address your questions. Now it's time to hear from a new voice. I'd like to bring in the voice of Richard Corbett, former British Labour MEP who became one of the leading political and academic voices in the debates over EU membership and reforming the bloc. He was actually in Brussels this month to mark the 10-year anniversary of Brexit and meet a group of British nationals who walked the whole way from London to the European capital. Take a look.
Alexander Stubb, President of Finland, came all the way to London, Chatham House lecture to say we want you back. Donald Tusk, Poland, says we dream of Britain coming back. Pedro Sanchez, Spain, says Brexit was a mistake, you should come back in. They do want us back. Why? Look at the geopolitics.
Look at the geopolitics. Richard Corbett making the point there, making the pitch for coming back into the EU. Now, that was one of your questions actually for Barry Andrews earlier. Would you like to welcome them back? And is it a necessity now due to the geopolitical world we're living in?
I think I would really welcome them back because we really miss them still. Also in the European Parliament, the British Conservative Party is still sorely missed, I think, in my group as well. But I think it will be an evolution in the coming years. We have other parties, as Barry said, in the UK now contending, and I think we have to work towards rebuilding trust and confidence also by having a more pragmatic approach, not a dogmatic, not a bickering approach of the past, not to be too tough, but really open up to
and the world is
United Kingdom.
A much more dangerous place than 10 years ago. Now, we do know the EU and the UK have signed a defence and security partnership back in May 2025, but is this working out?
Look, there's just not enough political energy behind this. Obviously, Keir Starmer has had his problems. The Commission has had a very full agenda. So the European Union UK agenda has been very strongly pushed by Maros Šefčovič. Let's be absolutely clear about this. But I am concerned about the slow progress on things like the ETS, electricity trading, SPS, food and those relationships, which we should be able to improve much more quickly than is the case.
And with the world in turmoil and the EU hoping to invest more in defence and security, especially with the US pulling out of NATO, there's a big gap in the budget now since Brexit. We've seen between 10 and 12 billion euros less in the coffers because the UK left. What does that mean now for the EU's ambitions to invest in defence?
I think the UK are a major military power, also capable of investing, and we really miss them there. So, as I said, we sorely miss them also in this dimension.
And is there a solution for the EU to muster up the money itself, try and leverage the EU budget?
That will mean that net payers, such as my own country, have to pay more, and I'm not really in favor of having the defence, which is primarily a national competence, transferred to the EU level, because really that development in the past also led to Brexit. And also in my own member states, if the net contribution of my own member state were to increase, I think that would decrease also support for the European Union, which has increased in the recent years. So I think we should leave it there and find pragmatic solutions there.
OK, I want to dive deeper into that topic. But first, let's take a break here on The Ring. Stay with us, though, here on Euronews. Welcome back to The Ring, Euronews' weekly debate show. I'm Maeve McMahon and I'm joined by Sander Schmidt, Dutch MEP from the European Conservatives and Reformists, and Barry Andrews, Irish MEP from Renew Europe. And today we're talking about how the EU is doing 10 years after the Brexit referendum and if the country of 69 million people could ever rejoin again. To get the view from Europeans on whether they should one day rejoin, we consulted some data from the European Council on Foreign Relations that says 66% of European respondents, quote, strongly support or tend to support UK membership. Support varies significantly from 56% in Bulgaria and 59% in France and Italy to 75% in the Netherlands and Denmark. And backers of far-right and Eurosceptic parties favour stronger UK-EU ties, including supporters of Germany's AfD and France's National Rally. So interesting data there, and many sharing your view that they do indeed miss the Brits and they'd love to invite them back. Your reaction?
Yeah, well, actually, the figures are very similar to the polling figures in the UK. So whereas it was 52% to leave, now the figures are the other way. There's most UK people consider that Brexit was a mistake. They consider that rejoining is the correct way. So really, there's hugely fertile political ground available to whichever politician has the courage to articulate return to the European Union and to put that to the people. And I think that the European Union should respond to that and provide a pathway to such a politician if they do have that courage.
And how should that path look? Are we talking about the red carpet being rolled out, or are we talking about stricter membership, no more opt-outs?
I think we need opt-outs as well, because we'll never get them back if we're too dogmatic, too strict there. So I think we ought to offer them.
So you almost want to go begging them?
The old package. I think that would be, then that's also what British voters and British citizens who were polled remember. So if we come up with other extra regulation, we need more pragmatism.
That's a very interesting view. Do you think other Europeans and European leaders would be on board with this?
No, they wouldn't, because clearly we do have differentiated accession. So Ukraine may come in the next few years, but I anticipate that it will be on different terms to the Western Balkans, for example. And I think the UK, as a former member, should be treated in a differentiated manner. But I don't see the European Council supporting the idea of going back to the original package of rebate outside Schengen, outside the euro. I think some of those issues will have to be spoken about. So, you know, while the UK are saying they want to return to the European Union, the majority, when you put the actual package, it might be a different story. So that debate has to happen in the UK initially before we have any discussions at Europe.
And 10 years on from now, how do you visualise the European Union? Will it be enlarged?
It will, in my ideal vision, would be slightly maybe enlarged, but enlargement is not a goal in itself. I'd like to have the United Kingdom back, and I think Norway and Iceland are perfect examples within the European economic area already to join the European Union. But if European leaders are too tough and we don't have this pragmatism towards the United Kingdom now in the upcoming months, this might only also slow down or close off the same development in Iceland and Norway.
Yeah, and I think if
closely follow it.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we have a positive discussion about the UK, I think the reputation of the European Union would be very, very profoundly enhanced by seeing the UK recognise that it was a mistake to leave and to begin the process of applying to rejoin.
And just a final point on EU enlargement, could the EU function as 30 or 35 with this current veto system?
Well, look, back in 2004, when we had the biggest accession, when all of the countries of Central and Eastern Europe joined, the argument was the European Union is not going to be able to function without really expanding QMV and withdrawing veto power. In fact, Ireland and other smaller member states insisted on keeping veto power and making sure that we limited QMV, and the roof hasn't fallen in. In fact, the European Union does continue to operate quite well. Having said that, from a foreign policy point of view, I believe that there are areas where there should be an expanded QMV.
Is that pragmatic?
No, as Barry said, I think the European Union should continue as it is, as the treaty is now with the vetoes. The number of vetoes and policies has already been limited in the past, before the Treaty of Lisbon as well. And I think we now have to safeguard this unanimity principle, especially if we want the UK back, if we want Iceland and smaller member states like Norway, potential member states to join. And it will really scare off these potential or real candidates if we abolish the national veto. And for my own member states, it's also been very important, not only for Ireland, but for other smaller member states to uphold the veto.
OK, well, it is now time to move on to our fifth and final round. And like always, to close, we do something a little bit different. I'm going to ask our MEPs a set of questions, and you can only answer with yes or no. Is that doable?
Maybe.
Is the European Union to blame for the Brexit vote, yes or no?
Yes.
No.
Is Nigel Farage perhaps to blame for the Brexit vote, yes or no?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Is Nigel Farage to blame for the Brexit vote, yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Was Brexit a wake-up call for the European Union, Shander?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's fair. I think that it forced the European Union to reflect in a way that it hasn't done for a long time.
And is the European Union more democratic now, today, than it was 10 years ago, yes or no?
There has been no treaty change, so no, it hasn't changed.
No.
Did disinformation decide the referendum in the UK, yes or no?
Yes, I think.
Yes, Cambridge Analytica, Russian money, massive disinformation.
And will the European Union ever speak with one voice?
Yes.
Yes.
And is Ursula von der Leyen a good leader, yes or no?
No, I don't think so.
Yes or no?
Sometimes she's good. On Israel, she's been a disaster.
Is the EU doing enough to stay competitive against the US and China, Shander?
No, absolutely not. We need more deregulation.
No.
And has the European Union become too dependent on regulation, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
That is the big debate, of course, of Brussels today. Should national vetoes in foreign policy be abolished? I know your answer.
No.
No. In some instances, yes. But
good to have allies in Renew as well.
Has the EU Green Deal strengthened the European economy?
Yes.
I don't think so. Not overall.
And will we see another Brexit in the next 10 years?
No way.
No.
And one final question. Is the future of the European Union bright, yes or no?
Yes. Come on, Sander, you know the right answer.
Yes, if we uphold the national veto and respect this national sovereignty as well.
And on that conclusion, we can bring this edition of The Ring to an end. We'd love to hear as well from you, thering@euronews.com. That is our email address. Barry Andrews and Chandra Smith, thank you so much for being our guests. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and see you soon.